Hey guys, welcome back to Jessin Reads Romance. I'm Jessin, and today I'm going to wrap up the books that I read in February. Now, there are some important books that I have never gotten to talk about yet because February kind of turned into a little bit of a hectic month towards the tail end of it. And also half of my reads for February were rereads, but I digress. I did not have time to make up like weekly wrap-ups like I wanted to. So there's a couple of very important books, like some of my favorite books that I've read so far this year on this February wrap-up list, and I'm so excited to finally talk about it. And that's how I'm gonna kick this off. Seriously, I think that this is one of my favorite books for the year. It's definitely at the top so far, and that is The Right Move by Liz Tom Ford. This is the second book in her Windy City series, and I've already loved Mile High. I think Liz Tom Ford has just created such a perfect storm in this romance. It hit all of my freaking like needs as a romance reader. It checked all of my boxes, and it used a lot of tropes that I'm like really gravitating towards. And I think that sometimes authors rely so heavily on like a trope to sell their book, and it's not very executed very well. At least in my opinion, that happens a lot. Sometimes that's what makes me very excited for a book, and then I'm a little bit disappointed because the story didn't feel as fleshed out, didn't feel like everything was laid out very well so that it had a flow and an ebb that really worked for the characters. But that is not the case for The Right Move. Liz Tom Ford literally knocked it out the park. And Ryan Shea, ladies and gentlemen, the hero of this book is pretty much my ideal boyfriend. Like literally, he is one of the swooniest heroes that I've read in a very long time. I adore him. And I love the way that he loves Indy. So the setup for the story is that Ryan Shea has a sister, and her best friend has recently broken up with her longtime boyfriend, and she's really kind of in a bind. She needs a place to stay. And since Ryan has an extra room, his sister kind of guilt trips him into letting Indy stay, and like he likes his privacy. He doesn't like to share his space, but of course he did whenever his sister needed a room, but that's different. That's family, you know? And the first impression that Ryan gets of Indy is not that wonderful. You can definitely see that they have extremely polarizing personalities, and it's one of my favorite tropes, opposites attract. So he's kind of forced to room with Indy, and he doesn't like it at first. And I feel like Liz Tom Ford really handled this very well, because there's a couple of instances in which Ryan actually says something a little bit hurtful to Indy, but he regrets it almost immediately. When we're in his point of view, he's like, man, I had this plan. I was gonna walk in and I was gonna be cordial, even though I'm kind of uncomfortable with having her in my apartment, but like she just set something off in me and I just reacted, and I said something out of instinct and it was the wrong move. He almost immediately comes out to correct that, and I really enjoy that. When someone messes up, I want them to take ownership over their actions, because everyone's going to mess up, right? And he's a grown boy, okay? He apologizes for his stuff. He tries to make up for it. And again, I think that this is what makes Ryan Shea so special, because I love small moments. I really do. I love small moments in romance. And what I mean by that is that some romance readers, and I'm not saying that this is a bad thing, but some romance readers, they prefer a very action-packed novel. They prefer high stakes and a little bit of drama to make the romance more interesting for them. I do like big events, like for example, a party or a wedding that the couple attends together, and that might have a great impact on the story because it moves their romance forward or it a setup for a conflict. But even though I do like those moments, I do feel like for it to be a realistic romance and something that really has an impact on me, I need to see the small day-to-day things. And that's what Liz Tom Ford does so well. Even though Ryan and Indy are completely different people, they really do try to get to know each other. So Ryan is very closed off. He doesn't even have very many friends. He's a professional basketball player, and he's a new captain. The old captain's trying to encourage him, hey, you need to bond more with the team. You need to like let them know who you are outside of basketball. And Ryan's like, what are you talking about? I am basketball. And he does have some trauma in his past that has formed this type of, you know, very isolated personality that he's developed. And being around Indy kind of brings him a little bit out of his shell, makes him confront a couple things about himself, but he's so freaking sweet and so thoughtful. And there's this TikTok about, it's this guy, and he was just like, women are so easy to please. And I've seen a couple of stitches where women are just kind of like expecting him to be like dumb about it, but he truly is just kind of like, you know, do something that a chore that they've been putting off, unloading the dishwasher or whatever, like bring her some flowers, clean her car, go get it washed, go clean it, like simple things. And I feel like Ryan Shea has that down pat because he just listens to Indy. And he could say one thing, one small thing, like, oh, I like coffee, but I prefer it cold. And so since he gets up early in the morning and he makes coffee because he has to go practice, he put some coffee in the refrigerator for her so that it could cool down, and then she could just throw some ice in it and drink her coffee. So it's like the little thoughtful things, and I think that that really brings a lot of depth to a relationship, and I like seeing those small moments, and Liz Tom Ford is excellent at this. Excellent at this. There are so many spoony moments. Like, there's too many to talk about, but I will say the way that he makes Indy feel valued, because her friendships that she has formed in high school and college and the relationship that she had with her boyfriend, it was very one-sided. She gave a lot of herself to those relationships and it just wasn't reciprocated. It wasn't appreciated. Her friends don't appreciate her. They take advantage of her, and her boyfriend really was terrible. But she thought that she was in love with him, and she was kind of accepting crumbs and thinking that this was the whole shebang. Like, this is what a relationship was. And then Ryan shows her that, no, I can't believe he didn't do that. That is like one of the simplest ways to show you that I appreciate you, and I'm going to do that for you. And it's just like, loved it. Absolutely loved it. 6 freaking stars. I love this book so much. I also couldn't help myself. I got the hot guy cover as well. And I'm not one to actually annotate my books. I've never been one to annotate my books. But I'm kind of getting a little bit FOMO because everyone's annotating their books. It looks so pretty, and I'm just like, maybe I want to annotate it. So I have 2 copies of this, and I might annotate this one. I don't know. Hot guy cover. I think I might annotate this one. Another one of my favorite books from February was by one of my favorite authors, Stacey Reed, The Wolf and the Wildflower. She recently had announced that this book was coming out, and I immediately like jumped on NetGalley to get that arc because it was just kind of like, I was just craving Stacey Reed. I'm so happy that she's going to be publishing books this year. And this one just didn't disappoint. It just was so good. So I think that the premise of this book is slightly unbelievable, but it doesn't matter because Stacey Reed executes everything so well. The characters are done so well. The plot of the story is perfect. It has a perfect flow. The pace was great. And the focus is really on the relationship between the hero and the heroine. So, unusual setup. We have a hero who has been missing for like 10 years. When he was 18, he went hiking and he got lost basically in the wilderness of Canada. And he has been isolated and alone and living in the wilderness. And so he's kind of a little bit primal. But since he was already a teenager, it's not like a Tarzan retelling where from a young age, like he really has no idea how to act in public. He does, but it's changed him, and he's recently been rescued and he's been brought back to England, and he is a duke. So that's enormous pressure for somebody who has lived in such isolation, lived with the instinct of like, this is survival. It's kill or be killed in this wilderness, you know, and he has to go back, and his mom is very distraught. She wants her son back, like her son as he was. She wants that back. And so she hires this mind doctor. And this doctor is actually the father of our heroine. But this is also another little kicker. Our heroine, Jules, is masquerading as a boy. In fact, her dad doesn't even know that she's a girl. So this was set up in the very beginning, which I was just like, whoa, this is bonkers. But I love it. I loved it. It created so much drama on the forefront. But again, I think that Stacey Reed did such a great thing with introducing these ideas, that this unbelievable situation that when Jules's mom gave birth to another girl and she had very difficult births, the doctor was just kind of like, you shouldn't have another baby. The midwife did not announce the sex of the baby when it was delivered, and the dad just absolutely assumed that it was a boy, and he was just like, thank you, and he was like, I'm so sorry for putting you through this again, and the mom really loves him, so she's just kind of like, he was so happy, I don't want to ruin his happiness. I also don't want to have another baby, so like, I'm just gonna pretend like she's a boy, because it's not like he's gonna change her diaper, right? And we're gonna keep this secret. And she only planned for it to be a little while, but it turned into a lifelong thing. And Jules has been brought up as a boy. She doesn't know that, you know, this is a secret, obviously, but she's gone to university. She's actually following in her father's footsteps. She loves psychology. And she's very excited about this opportunity because her father invites her, Jules, to go with him to the Duke's estate so that they can observe him, because the mom is just kind of like, fix him. You know, the Duchess, the Dowager Duchess, is just kind of like, I need you to fix him. And they're like, okay, this is a fascinating case. Like, we definitely want to observe him. And the thing about it is, they're kind of expecting one thing from what the Duchess has told them. They're expecting him to be this absolute wild man who maybe is not fully intact mentally. And when they get there, That's not the case at all. He's extremely intelligent, James. He's extremely intelligent. And I love the first meeting between the hero and the heroine because since he has this overdeveloped sense of like smell and sight, he just has like this innate instinct, this primal instinct. He immediately ferrets out that she is a woman by her scent. And it's pretty hilarious. And so he only wants to work with her. He only wants to work with her. And because he recognizes, he's just like, okay, you're other. You're something other like me. Like, I'm not just fully this aristocrat that everyone wants me to be. Like, I can do this. I have stuff to catch up on. Like, I used to really like all this stuff, but like, you know, I can't just integrate back into society like nothing happened. I don't like crowds. The chatter, I just don't understand the chatter. Like, I'm so used to quiet and it's just a little bit overwhelming. I like to feel the open spaces. Like, I don't like to be indoors. And he's just like, I know that you kind of understand me, right? Because you're a woman. And like, she doesn't even acknowledge. She's just like, oh, am I? And like, she doesn't acknowledge that she's a woman, but it's like they're keeping each other's secrets, that he is willing and capable and he understands. He's just unwilling to pretend for his mother, and he knows her secret. He's not going to tell anybody, but their romance is very private. Since he won't open up in front of her dad or talk to his mom, really, they have lots of private moments together, and I think that's what makes this relationship so strong, because I do feel like they get to know each other so well, and I'm just like, these are two perfect people for each other. Like, they are just literally each other's puzzle pieces. They fit so well together. Stacey Reid is just so good at creating such dynamic relationships between the hero and the heroine. I will say I did have a couple of like gripes, a couple of things that could have like made this book absolutely perfect, but I didn't care because I enjoyed the story so much and I enjoyed the characters so much that I was willing to overlook it. But there were a couple of things that I feel like Stacey Reid could have like tightened up a little bit to make this like a perfect book, and I will like kind of throw up a spoiler so that you can, so that I can talk about it. Okay, so one of the things that I feel like is a slight weakness of the book is Jules' secret identity as a boy. She's very afraid of what her father's going to think of her because they have such a close relationship, and I was waiting for this reveal and I was very interested to see what the dad's reaction would be, but the dad's reaction is almost a little glossed over. It's just kind of like, she doesn't really do it to his face, and it kind of is a roundabout way of saying that, hey, I've always been a girl and you and mom need to work things out. He just kind of like accepts it, which of course I wanted him to, but like I just feel like it happened so quickly. Like the resolution was just very fast, very quick, and I almost wish that he had found out that she was a girl earlier on in the book and it took him that long to really accept that he had been lied to, basically, you know, his entire marriage. And I felt like that would have been a little bit more realistic way to handle that. But again, Stacey Reid decided to focus on the relationship between Jules and James. That was pretty much the element that was perfectly developed, in my opinion. And the relationships with the parents were a little bit sidelined, and I wish we could have seen a little bit more of that. We do have this moment where James is sitting with his mother. She's on a swing and she's kind of like opening up to him a little bit, and I wish we had a little bit more of that, a little bit more of him and his sister as well. We have a great moment where she's staying up late at night playing the piano, and she's never really expressed like how hurtful it is that he doesn't really talk to her, and they have this wonderful moment as siblings because they used to be close, and it's just really great, and I wish that we had a little bit more of that. Also, I feel like just the ending was very quick to me. Jules decides to fake her death in a carriage accident, just like put it out in the paper that Jules, you know, died. Jules, the boy, died, and then she reappeared in society, basically, not really in society, but to James as, you know, Juliana, a cousin of, you know, her family. Again, there was no other way to really approach that, but I just feel like everything happened so fast, and I wish that it would have had a little bit more time to breathe before like ending. But seriously, otherwise, this book was so entertaining and so enjoyable. Another historical romance that I picked up was The Duke Gets Even by Joanna Shupe. This is her final book in the, oh my god, which one is this one? The Fifth Avenue Rebels? The Fifth Avenue Rebels, I think. Anyway, so this couple kind of has been teased since the very first book, and I was a little surprised about the setup for their romance, because we have suspected something has gone on with Nellie and the Duke. The Duke is the guy in the first book who's engaged to Nellie's best friend. Obviously, they don't end up, getting married. And it's almost a running joke that he tries to marry every one of her friends and has a close relationship with everyone else except for Nellie. And we don't know why. We don't know why up until this book. So we do get to see how exactly they met. And I was a little bit surprised that they really only met the night before the events of the first book started. I don't know. I think I was just expecting a little bit more from their history. And Nellie was also too much of a stubborn heroine for me. She liked her independence, and I did agree with her when she was saying, if my father's not going to force me to marry anybody, I'm independently wealthy. My father has he has been very generous to have a ton of money to my own name. Like, I don't ever need to get married. Why would I want to give the power over to this man? And she seems to really, really, really despise men throughout the entire book, honestly, until she actually finally caves in and is with the Duke. Every time she reflects on her friends kind of, forming their own lives, they're settling down, they're getting married, they're going to plan a family, and she feels a little bit jealous, but she also kind of almost looks down on her friends because she's just like, oh man, they gave up their freedom just to be with a man. And I feel like she's just not very self-aware. Like, that's one of her flaws, is she kind of knows that she's jealous, but she doesn't think it's because she's lonely. She's like, why would I be lonely? And I think I would have believed this stance a little bit more if she enjoyed the lifestyle she proclaims to be better than being in a relationship and getting married to a man. She has been exploring. She has had dalliances and affairs. She's pretty open about it as well. She's not really trying to hide that she's an unmarried lady who has been with men before. And she gets really butthurt when society judges her about that. But she deliberately took actions to not try to even hide it, but is also extremely depressed when people think she is a loose woman. I'm like, but that's the image that you've cultivated. She doesn't even enjoy half the people that she's really with. It's almost just kind of like she wants to stick it to society's social constructs, so she does these things, but then she feels bad afterwards. And I just wish that she was a little bit more confident in herself, so that I would really believe that it was a struggle to choose between independence and getting married to a man who she obviously had feelings for. If life was so good, I would believe this struggle a little bit more, but she is extremely depressed right now. I didn't really enjoy her journey. I felt like Lockwood was pretty spoony, and then we also kind of had like this kind of like BDSM, a little bit of like, ooh, he likes kink and we're a little rough together, and I like that. That, I don't know, it just didn't really work for me. It just didn't really work. And I do love the grand gesture because Nellie is the one to do a grand gesture. In this book, I do enjoy what she did, but it's also still a little bit, she was reluctant to just kind of like be vulnerable at that point. So I was just not as enthused about their romance as, honestly, the only book that I really loved from this series was the second one. The Lady Gets Lucky was definitely my favorite out of this entire series because the first book was good, did not like the third act conflict. I thought it was meh. The third book, I also felt similarly to The Duke Gets Even. I just did not really enjoy the setup, and I didn't enjoy the journey of the romance. So both of those were really my lowest ratings. And I did give it a 3-star because there's really nothing wrong with like writing, and the characters, I could see the potential in them. I just don't feel like they were played to their best ability. So yeah, 3 stars for that one. Joanna Shupe is very hit or miss for me. She just is. Okay, another historical. The historicals were really doing it for me. I mean, I did do a lot of rereads that were not historical as well, but one of my goals for 2023 is to read all of Lisa Kleypas's backlist. I've read most of the books that she's published more recently, but I'm trying to read everything. The book that I picked for February was Because Youre Mine. This is the second book in her Capitol Theater series, and in the first book we're introduced to Logan Scott, and he is the owner of a theater company, and he's an actor as well, and this is his romance. And the setup for this story is that the heroine, her parents want her to marry up to elevate their name. So they have pretty much betrothed her to someone who is her father's age, and he's disgusting. So her plan is, you know what, I'm just gonna ruin myself and then I won't have to marry him. And she gets a wild idea after she returns to like her boarding school and she sees these girls like swooning over this portrait of Mr. Scott. And so she's just like, I'm going to act like my parents have asked me to go back home, but I'm really gonna go to London and I'm gonna try to seduce Mr. Scott. And this is an age gap. He is a lot older than her, and his passion is theater. Like his baby, his life, everything revolves around this theater. He is committed in a relationship to his theater. And when she just kind of like rolls in there, she's very straightforward about what she wants, not why she wants it, but what she wants. And Logan Scott's just kind of like, no. But his business partner, who's the heroine from book 1, she decides to hire her on as her assistant. So Maddie becomes an assistant and just kind of like, she helps around the theater, anything that needs to be done, even in the costume department, like helping them sew and hem and stuff like that. And Logan is just confronted with this woman who's really beautiful and he's kind of attracted to her. She's also kind of prone to accidents when he's there. And like the other members of the company even mention this, like, oh my gosh, she is amazing, but like she only becomes like accident prone. A piece of a set almost like fell on her whenever he walked into the room, and they're just like, something's going on between Logan Scott and Maddie, and our Maddie. So I really do enjoy it. It does have like the structure of this book has all the elements of a typical historical romance novel that was written during this time, and I feel like a lot of modern day historical romance authors construct their romance this way. It has a little bit too much melodrama, especially towards the back end of the book. It's like secret parentage, fake deaths, like everything's just happening, you know? And those can work well, but I just feel like those elements were really in the story just for like, plot twist, and that's fine. That's fine. It doesn't make it a bad book. It just doesn't make it one of her best. But overall, I really enjoyed their relationship. I think I enjoyed the first half of this book a lot more than the second half, but I still gave this book 4 stars. It was pretty solid. It was pretty solid and I enjoyed it. I had a good time. Other books that I read during February were Consider Me and Play With Me by Becca Mack. These 2 books are hockey romances. Even though I enjoyed myself, there was something about the writing that I ended up by tiring of. It just wasn't my cup of tea. I can't like indulge in this type of book very often because to me it's a flaw in it's a writing flaw. At least it's a preference for me that I just don't enjoy. The characters in both of these books, they're very endearing. They're very cute. Both books I would say are a little insta-lovey, but again, it's quite endearing. But the author is very heavy-handed when it comes to this slapstick style of comedy. And I related this to Friends, like the type of humor that Friends is. It's a little bit over the top, you know? A lot of things that they do, people wouldn't really do in real life. Things that they say are a little bit exaggerated. There's lots of body humor, you know? Lots of tripping and falling and just like crazy things happening to get a laugh. And that's what this author does a lot. It wasn't too noticeable in the beginning. I just couldn't put my finger on it. But when it happened with both books, I finally saw it. And I don't really enjoy that. It's very heavy-handed kind of humor. And I also feel like it doesn't really work because if it was just the first couple, because the hero in that first book is very golden retriever energy type of hero, you know? He used to be a fuckboy and then he's reformed and he becomes this like perfect kind of boyfriend who just wants to do everything for his girlfriend, which was like really nice and really sweet. A very cute book. But it also happened for the second book as well. Like the humor was the exact same. These characters acted the exact same. Not their personalities per se, but like the type of dialogue. It just gives kind of like one trick pony to me. Like that's my problem with her writing as well. So yeah, these weren't terrible books. I just don't know that I want to pick up another one by her. Not to say that I won't ever, because I kind of do want the friend, I think his name's Alex if I can remember correctly, the one who was in a long-term relationship and his girlfriend turned out to be awful and a cheater. I want him to get his HEA. So like I'm invested in characters, but I'm not invested in the writing for Becca Mack, if that makes sense. But a hockey romance that I think was really done well was Her Greatest Mistake by Hannah Cohen. This was another recommendation by Caitlin. She has been talking about, you know, this author, and I read the series, the First Generation series, and this is Next Gen series. And I really like this one because it's a second chance romance, but they never were in a relationship. relationship. These two characters were best friends growing up. And I mean, from the time that they were little up until high school, and you could see that the reason why they weren't in a relationship was because they didn't want to mess up their friendship because they were so close. But the sexual tension was there. And we do get lots of flashbacks in Her Greatest Mistake. It's not one of my favorite things to have a ton of flashbacks. I wish that we could have maybe had a couple of flashbacks, but not as many as we did. That's one of the reasons why this wasn't a complete 5-star. But the relationship between these characters were so great. And we have a virgin hero. And I just really loved it. It's fake dating. It's I hate you, but I really love you type of romance. And it was just great. And I can't wait for the next book in the series as well. This whole family, I'm living for them. Another one of my favorite reads for February was Mother of Death and Dawn, which I could go grab the book, but I'm not going to because I already started talking and I've been chatting for a while. Anyway, I love this series by Carissa Broadbent. I did finish up this trilogy. This is the third book in the trilogy, and it was literally the perfect ending to it. I've already talked about this book. I'll link it in my description box down below if you want to see me talk about, the plot of this book and what I love so much about Carissa Broadbent. She's just amazing, and I can't wait for her books in March and April, I think, are her next books that are coming out. Really love her as a fantasy author. Fantastic. And then the two books that I read in February for my Patreon was Second Star to the Left and The Words. Second Star to the Left is a Peter Pan retelling, but it's about romance between Captain Hook and Tinkerbell. And it wasn't that great. It wasn't that great. I gave it 3 stars. I liked Hook as a character. I didn't really love Tinkerbell, and I also felt like the whole plot revolving around Tinkerbell and her trying to get back to her home and stuff like that. It was a little weak. It was just a little bit weak. And it also had almost too much action. There was too much going on. I was halfway through the book and I was like, is it not over yet? I feel like we've done a lot. So it was okay. And I probably won't read more by this author. The Words by Ashley Jade. This is a type of book where it's too much drama for me. Not necessarily angst, but it's drama. Our hero and heroine were in high school together. The heroine was a tutor for him. He was just the cool kid. Typical cool guy in high school, bad boy, and everyone loves him. He fucks around, whatever, and he wants to be a musician. She is the daughter of someone who very successfully writes songs for rock bands and stuff like that. And she secretly wants to do the same. Well, they have a falling out, and a couple years down the line, I think there should have been a much bigger gap, honestly, if we were going to do a time jump. I just felt like they did not mature enough, and I just feel like what really didn't work for me about this book is he did something. First of all, it didn't need to happen that way. There was a very simple solution. It is a spoiler. Very simple solution. He just decided to be an asshole about it, and that created their separation. So the heroine had every right to be an absolute bitch to him years down the line when she's forced to kind of be his babysitter. He's kind of fallen off the rocker. He's hitting rock bottom, and she needs to be the babysitter because the manager's like, you're the only girl that won't just sleep with him, because all the people who we've hired ended by sleeping with him, and I need him to not. And so what really doesn't work about this book is that I was rooting for her to really be so hard on him and for him to have to grovel to be back in her favor. But almost immediately, I swear to God, she has one perfect moment where she first meets him again, and she is a badass about it. And then he gets on stage the next night, and she's just oh my God, my panties are so wet for him. He's still so hot. And it that lowers the stakes for me, because I'm oh, she's gonna easily fall back into bed with him, and she does. So it was very disappointing. Very disappointing the way that played out for me. There were elements of this book that I did enjoy. I feel like it could have been a good book if the author wasn't trying so hard to make it so filled with drama. But lots of people like that about this book. Other people really enjoy all of that. That's what makes it such a great book for them, but not for me. And the sad thing is I'm actually interested in the side characters. I was very interested in, God, what was her name? Her boyfriend was part of the band, and toward the beginning of the book, right after the time jump, he dies in a car accident because they're doing drugs and all that. So she's not his widow, but ex-fiance, he died. And she kind of has a thing for his brother. And I liked that stuff playing out in the background. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I was kind of invested in it. I'm also invested in another character. It's kind of a spoiler, but it's a female character who kind of is introduced toward the back half of it. I also am feeling vibes with another band member in her, and I kind of want to know what happens But when I found out, I didn't realize The Choice by Ashley Jade was the second book because it's like not technically, I don't know, marketed as a series. I found out that The Choice was only the first book in a duet. And I have so many feelings about duets and authors writing duets. For the most part, and I've said this multiple times, I think that duets are just a cash grab. It's a way for an author to make more money for one story, for one relationship, when most of the time the characters don't need that long to get together. They really don't. And if I already felt like The Words was very melodramatic and it was a long book, I feel like there's going to be even more melodrama keeping them apart, and I'm going to be extremely frustrated, even more frustrated than I was with The Words. Because if there is melodrama, it makes me frustrated. It makes me frustrated with the characters, it makes me frustrated with the author, and it's just not an enjoyable reading experience. So when I found out that it was a duet, I was just like, well, that really kind of kills my interest. I don't want to put myself through that. I don't want to put myself through 2 full books where these characters are hurting each other, most likely. Because these characters are quite toxic to each other in The Words, and I'm sure in The Choice, and whatever the second book is called. And I heard a rumor that the second book is going to be like ginormous as well in the duet, and I'm just like, no, that's ridiculous, it's too much. So it's a little sad, I feel like there's definitely elements in Ashley Jade's writing characters that I enjoy, but for the most part it's just like, this is what I don't like about romance, or this is a type of romance that just does not work for me. But it works for a lot of people, so if you like lots of drama, you'll probably like this book. And then I reread a lot of books. I'm not going to talk about all of them because I've talked about them before on my channel, but I'll list them out for you. So I reread Mafia Mistress, Mafia Darling, Heart of Obsidian, Devil in Disguise, The Heir, Heartless, and I also reread the last 3 books in the Vampire Academy series, which our live show did get postponed, and I'm not sure when it's going to actually be rescheduled for, but I am going to sit down and talk about like my experience rereading Vampire Academy as a whole and what do I think about that whole process, and hopefully I can do a dedicated video to that one as well. So yeah, that was my February. Thank you for, sitting through a very long-winded February wrap-up that focused a lot on some of the books that I didn't really get to talk about yet, so I did spend a lot of time talking about those books and what I enjoyed about them and what I didn't. Really hoping that March is not quite as hectic. I don't foresee it being quite as hectic as February was. There's just lots of things that I had to get straight for my last semester. So I'm hoping that I will be able to do some weekly wrap-ups for March. Anyway, if you like this video, give it a big thumbs up, and if you're not already subscribed to my channel, make sure you subscribe to get notified on any future videos that I do. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, life's better with a little HEA. Bye guys.